So now we're going to talk about linear regressions. To create a linear regression, we are going to rely on our calculator to help us out here. Just like we did in the other unit, we're using a lot of calculator functions to complete our answers. So for linear regressions, we're first going to start by going over our calculator functions. There are three things we're going to talk about with our calculator functions. The first one is going to be very similar to what we did in the univariate unit. We're going to be entering data, so we're going to go over how to enter data. We're also going to go over how to calculate. And we're also going to go over how to get the R value. To enter data, we're going to follow the same steps that we did in the univariate unit, which was pressing Stat and Edit. In the univariate unit, when we were entering data, we only entered into L1. But in this unit, because it's bivariate data, which is two-sided data, we're going to use L1 and L2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to skip a couple lines, and we're going to write down our first example here, and we're going to use this example to walk us through how to find these calculator functions and how to answer the questions. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a table. I'm going to fill in the bottoms. So now when we take this information and we plug this into the calculator, again, you want to make sure that you are plugging into the calculator with me as I go along in the video. Excuse me. If you need to, make sure that you are pausing the video as needed so that you can catch up and make sure that you're plugging into the calculator with me. So we're going to go to our main screen here. We're going to press Stat and Edit so we can get to our table so we can plug in L1 and L2. Now remember, if there's information already here in our calculator, we want to reset the calculator so that it deletes all this information. When we're plugging in information from a table, the first row or the first column is our L1. The second row or second column will go in for L2. So I'm going to plug in this information. Make sure you're hitting enter after each one. Make sure you're typing in slow, because if you type in too fast, it's not going to register what you are typing in, and then you will get the wrong answer. Always make sure that they line up. So now we have the information in our table. We can move over to where it says calculate. So now we're going to press Stat again. We're going to go over to where it says calc. In the last unit, we were doing one variable statistics because we were doing univariate data. Now that we're doing two variables, okay, we're not just going to choose the two variable statistics. We need to choose the type of regression. At the top here, it says that we're doing linear regressions, so I need to choose the option that looks like linear regression. And now you can kind of see that option 4 and option 8 look very similar to each other, except for what's in the parentheses. And it also says lin regress. Okay, we are going to always use option 4 for a linear regression. So here where it says stat calc, we are going to choose option 4, and we're going to select the lin regress. You are never, ever, ever going to use option 8 in our calculator. Never, ever, ever. You're only going to use option 4. So we're going to go down to option 4 and hit enter. We're going to have to hit enter a ton of times until it gives us this screen here. What this screen here does and what this here gives us is the linear regression equation. So what I didn't write yet, which we should write, is what part A is going to ask us. The question is always going to ask you for the linear regression equation. So our part A, write the linear regression equation. And in parentheses, I'm going to write 3 decimals because we want to make sure that we're rounding to 3 decimal places. Our calculator gives us a bit of information on our screen here. It says y equals ax plus b. It says a equals 98 point, and now I want to round that 3 decimal places, so 8, 5, and then I look at the number right next to the 7, and that number is going to tell me if I should round up or keep it the same. It's a 1, so it's going to stay the same, so 8, 5, 7. And then it says b equals, we're going to do the same thing, 737, point, and then our 3 decimals, 3, 3, 3. Writing this is not enough as an answer. This is not what the question is asking for. The question is asking for the equation. So we need to take A and B, and we're going to plug it into this equation right here for A and for B. Okay, so that this equation becomes y equals our A value. Our A value here is 98.857. X plus our B value, 737.333. This is what we are looking for as answers. This is what you need to have on your paper as the equation for the linear regression. This is just what the calculator gives you. It gives you the information that you need to plug into that equation. You need to make sure that you are plugging it into the equation that they give you. After you find your equation, it's going to ask you, and this question might come before or after, okay, but it's going to ask you for the linear, so write the linear correlation coefficient. After it asks you to find it, it's going to say describe. Okay? It wants us to describe what that R value means. Okay? And here, let's make sure we're rounding 2 decimals. Our R value will always be rounded to 2 decimal places. Correlation coefficient, that's what we just finished talking about on the previous video, is what R is equal to. So up at the top here on our values, or I'm sorry, in our calculator functions, to get the R value, we're going to talk about how to do this, okay? So once you're at your screen, clear it back so you're at your main screen here. First thing I want you to do is press the mode button, which is right here next to second, and you'll see a whole bunch of stuff come up here on the screen. I want you to go down to where it says Stat Diagnostics. So we scroll all the way down here to where it says Stat Diagnostics. You want to make sure that it is turned on. So if you move over here and press enter, it'll have the little black box flashing over on. That means that we've turned our diagnostics on. You want to make sure that you are doing this before, otherwise you will not get the R value. Now that I have my stat diagnostic turned on, and you should all be doing this in your calculator if you haven't done so yet, once we have our stat diagnostic on, I'm going to hit second and the mode button to get back to my main screen. I want to recalculate my linear regression line, and I'll be able to find my linear correlation coefficient. So I'm going to press these functions again on my calculator, stat, go over to calc, and scroll down to choose option 4, and hit enter a bunch of times. And now this time, when your screen pops up, you're going to see an R squared and an R. In this class, we only use the R, so ignore that whole row for R squared. We are never going to use that R squared. So then down here where it says R, we want 2 decimal places. So 0.9, and that second 8 is going to round the first 8 up to a 9, and we get 0.99. In the last video, we were talking about correlation coefficients and how we identify them, about being strong or weak, and then being positive or negative. This is the same describe that the question is asking us to do here. When it says describe, it wants you to tell me strong or weak, negative or positive. So when we look here, we can see that 0.99 is very strong because it's very close to 1. Very strong, and this is a positive number, so positive correlation. You need to have both of those answers to get full credit for this type of question. If it's asking for the linear correlation coefficient and says describe, it wants what R is equal to and then what it is. Strong, weak,